Hello and welcome to Talk Leadership with Cedrick. Talk Leadership with Cedrick is a group where we focus on leadership and personal growth with small business leaders, educators, and local thought leaders. Our goal is to introduce our audience to leaders who are making an impact with innovative ideas and thinking. Tonight, I'm going to introduce you to another dynamic leader. Last week, we had a very good dynamic leader. Tonight, we're going to even take it up a notch. Our guiding principle, our guiding leadership principle is the law of contribution, which says growing yourself enables you to grow others. You can't give what you don't have. So first, you must grow yourself to be able to grow others. We believe outstanding leaders like yourself and others will help others grow by giving to them first. So tonight, what I want to do is introduce you to our guest tonight. And I every week I say, hey, I want to do a proper introduction. So sit back and let me introduce our guest tonight. You're going to be very excited and impressed with our leadership guest that we have tonight. So our guest tonight is Micheal E. Smith. He's the president and managing partner of Pine Place Developments. Micheal is a native of Tulsa, Oklahoma. He's a product of the Tulsa Public Schools. Micheal received his BS degree in petroleum engineering technology from Oklahoma State. So he's an engineer. Micheal spent 34 years with Marathon Oil Company, and then he finally retired in July of 2013. Now he's held various technical and managerial positions within the company. And sit back because I want to introduce him. I want you to see how impressive this young brother is. Now, like I said, he's held numerous positions, both technical and managerial, in both domestic, meaning here in the United States, and globally. In his roles at Marathon, he was responsible for all facets of Marathon's corporate office, which is a huge facility. Now, when I say a huge facility, I'm not talking about a 4,000 square foot facility. I'm talking about a 1,000,000 square foot facility in Houston, Texas. Now, if you're in charge of that, you know that you're doing some things. So you're impressing somebody. You're making a difference somewhere in your leadership journey. Additionally, Micheal was responsible for real property acquisition and dispositions, leasing, architecture, interior design, and construction management. He had oversight for negotiations, design, construction activities in several different locations, both globally and domestically. Throughout his direct efforts, Marathon's average year-over-year spend with minority and women-owned businesses increased to over $150 million. Now that's making an impact, folks. That's making an impact in diverse communities. Now in 2003, Micheal branched out. He formed Pine Place Developments, where he was instrumental in the development of an international hotel group, a Candlewood Suite Hotel, right here in Houston, Texas, in the Katy area. Now, this was not a small place. Get this. I want you to understand the person that we have with you tonight. This was a $6.2 million venture. 100% of it, let me say that again, 100% of it was minority-owned development, which is just awesome. It's outstanding. You need to understand the person you're going to be seeing and hearing from tonight. Pine Place continues to retain about 20% ownership in this project and oversees its day-to-day management. Now, Pine Place Development actively also seeks development and redevelopment opportunities in underserved and underdeveloped markets and communities around the United States, in places like Northeast Oklahoma, Houston, Galveston, South Texas area. Now, Micheal didn't only have a successful corporate career, he not only has a successful business, Micheal is also, he gives back. He serves his community in several different ways. Let me tell you, and then I'm gonna let you hear from Micheal. But he's a member of the Houston Urban League. He's also a member with the KIP Sunnyside Middle and High School group. He's also a member of the guiding council for Eastside University Village Community Learning Center. He's the chairman of the board of advisors for the College of Science, Engineering, and Technology at Texas Southern University. The brother is impressive. He's also a deacon at my church, Holman Street Baptist Church. Woo-hoo. And he's also a member, for you fraternity brothers out there, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. So let's welcome Micheal E. Smith to the group tonight.
Cedrick, you are too kind. You're very too kind. You've really embellished more than you should have. But I will send you a check. It will be a very small check, but I will send you a check. And I happen to be looking at the live comments, and I see a stalwart, a giant in the Houston community, and that's Tiffany Williams. I see she's on. She's listening to us. She's viewing us tonight. And Tiff, how you doing? And she is doing some tremendous things in the Houston community. And I look up to young people like Tiffany Williams. She's just doing a dynamic job with her media corporation that she has.
Yeah, with Twice Media, it's amazing that you know Tiffany. So and we'll get to the question. So, but Tiffany is my video media partner. She does all the videos for LaFleur Leadership Institute. So shout out to Miss Tiffany Williams. She does some outstanding
yes, she does.
Work.
Yes, she does. Yes, she
so
does.
awesome. So Mike, we believe that everything rises and falls on leadership. And tonight I want to have this discussion around leadership, and you have such a vast a wealth of knowledge and experience in the leadership realm. You know, we can talk theory about leadership all day long, but we also want to bring to our audience people who lived it and who still live leadership and knowing how to influence others. So tonight, I want to, my first question for you. So I know I did an introduction, but you tell us about your journey to leadership and how did it get you to where you are today?
Well, to be honest with you, Cedrick, I'm a late bloomer to leadership in terms of leading groups, leading people, setting out strategy, casting a vision. I really didn't move into management until I was late in my career at Marathon. Obviously, I had supervisory roles where it was onesie twosies and things of that nature, but it wasn't until probably about 2004, 2005 where I was thrust into leadership in terms of managing groups, managing a large groups, 40, 50. 60 people and setting strategy. So really, I was a late bloomer. I was really my late 40s, early 50s when I moved into leadership. But one of the things that if I use, I'll even go back further. I've had a job that paid me a check since 1968.
I won't even tell you that I was one.
yeah, I was 1968. I was 11 years old. I'm 63 now, and I had a job in Marion Anderson Junior High School in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and my job was to clean the baseboards along the walls of the whole school, and I did such a good job. It was a summer job, and I did such a good job that they kept me on doing different things at the school throughout the school year, and I actually got paid. And one of the things that, when it comes to leadership, probably one of the first um, uh, snippets of leadership that I was exposed to was the building engineer at the time. His name was Roy Johnson. He uh, watched me, he worked alongside me, and then he let me spread my wings. He gave me responsibilities. He says, "Okay, you have done a good job doing these baseboards and cleaning gum off the back of desks and everything. But here's some keys, and I need you to go around and you do X, Y, and Z, and I just need you to get it done. I have confidence in your ability to get the job done." And so, fast forward into the mid 2000s, mid early to mid 2000s, where I'm managing people, um, groups of people. One of the first things that I wanted to do as a leader is, one, inspire confidence in your people. I think it's very, very important that when you are dealing with a diversity of folks, people who are a heck of a lot smarter than you,
Hmm.
uh, may have more experience than you have. My first true managerial position was, I was not trained for it actually. I was not a subject matter expert, and I was really kind of thrown into the fire. And I had a group. I was managing a group of 12 people at the time that had been working in their various positions in the group 10, 12, 17, 20 years. And so, a new kid on the block coming in, um, they look at you with a little bit of trepidation. They don't know who you are. They know you don't know the job. They don't know all the intricacies of it. But the first thing that you have to do when you come in as a leader is you have to inspire confidence, that they have confidence that you believe in them, and that
Yes.
you have a belief system that they can attach themselves to. And so that was one of the first things. I'm a late bloomer in terms of leadership. A lot of experience in the onesie twosies. Obviously I worked in the oil and gas industry for 34 years. I was a petroleum engineer and started off in Lafayette, Louisiana, and working in the office. But after about 4 months in the office, I would have to go offshore, and I would go offshore, not to be the traditional go out and work on the rig. I would go out as actually a supervisor for a specific job, and I would go out, and the people that I would be supervising would be about a two-man crew, and but on an offshore platform, it's like a big floating hotel. It's a big floating, basically floating refinery,
Hmm.
and so you have specific jobs that you have to do, and roles and responsibilities. And I had two guys, and I had always been a worker since I was 11 years old, and so I was the company man. And you go out, and as the company man, you give them their assignment, and then you go inside into the galley, and you drink coffee and look out the window and see if they're working. Well, I kind of took a different tack. I would um, give them an assignment, and the assignment may be 15 hours long. While they were working 15 hours, I was right there with them 15 hours.
You know, it's,
And whenever I would have a job to go offshore, I would always ask for the same crew. It was a third party crew, and they would always love to work with me because they felt respected. And these were guys that didn't look like me. These were guys that didn't have my educational background. These are guys that were from Mississippi, Alabama, had eighth grade educations, but they were making, $30,000, $40,000 a year, and they thought they were in a good place. And why did they need me? But they respected the fact that I valued what they brought to the table. And I think with leadership, when people feel that they are valued, and that when people feel that you have confidence in their ability, they will they will go to the red zone for you. They will
Yes.
always go into the red zone with you, and so that started out early. Um, the journey to leadership, leaders. Uh, One thing you have to understand about leadership and being a good leader is humility. Um, you have to be a lifelong learner. Um, you have to improve upon your craft. You have to look at other leaders and slice and dice and dissect what other leaders are doing and what makes them effective. You got to be a reader. You've got to be a lifelong learner. You've got to be willing to collaborate with other leaders, ask
Mhm.
ask difficult questions of leaders, be curious as a leader.
Yes.
I think one of the things that separates uh, uh, great leadership, and I won't do too much of a compare and contrast. If we look in the political realm, when you look at the leadership today, the head of leadership, and then you look at previous leaders who have held the highest office in the land. Well, the thing that separates all of them, and they're all smart. Even the current person is smart.
Hmm.
Uh, uh, is but the current leader doesn't have a natural curiosity about things. And when you don't have a natural curiosity about things, then you don't have vision. You cannot develop vision
Right.
without having some natural curiosity. Um, um, so that's kind of that in the journey, and the journey never ends. Leadership never ends.
Right.
Even when you don't have anyone to manage, leadership never ends.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wholeheartedly agree with you 100%. And so there's a couple leadership principles here that you said that you didn't say it directly, you said it indirectly. And here's the first one is the law of buy-in. The law of buy-in says people buy into the leader before they buy into the vision, right? So
Exactly.
your teams bought into you and then they brought into the vision.
Hmm.
And a lot of times leaders get that twisted, think that you need to buy into me. I mean, buy into the vision first, and me later. No, they're gonna buy into you first. So that's the first thing that you said. I love that and I appreciate that. But the biggest thing that the audience that you need to get from what Brother Smith just said is what we call the law of influence. The true measure of a leader is influence, nothing more, nothing less. We all influence someone. See, those people that he managed, even though he might not have had the experience and the years with those people, he influenced them. And he influenced them in a major way. And here's what he said: they felt that he believed in them, right? When people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right?
Exactly.
And a great example of that is Mother Teresa. You said, "Hey, you started out in leadership late in your career." Well, you know what? Mother Teresa was one of those people that
Yeah.
she pilgrimaged late in her career, continually leading people. And this is why the smallest woman in the room, but had the most influence in the room.
Yes. Exactly.
Uh,
Exactly. And it doesn't really matter where your background is. Uh, last week you had your guest on, and he was from Central Louisiana. You're from South Louisiana. He played in the band and played the tuba. You played the drums. He went to one of the schools in Florida, and you went to the Air Force in Florida. It
mhm.
doesn't matter where your background. It doesn't matter where you're coming from, but it's your life experiences. It's what you're exposed to. It's what your external stimulus is.
Yes.
And again, it goes back to: are you willing to be curious in your journey that helps you be a good leader? I think three things that come to mind. I've kind of talked about it on one of them: the curiosity in terms uh, being a good leader. And I'll make it personal in terms of what I think my personal strengths would be is the curiosity. Secondly, you've got to be a great leader. I mean, a great listener. You've got to be willing to push back and hear opposing views. You got to be able to hear other people's ideas. You have to be able to process, be effective at processing other people's ideas and thoughts and visions and incorporate something, which leads you to being a consensus builder. When
Yeah.
you have teams, the best teams are the ones that can reach consensus on things. And what that means is uh, uh, you don't get 100% of what you want. I don't get 100% of what I want. We meet somewhere in the middle and we leave something on the table, but we've got enough that we can push forward and we have a shared vision to move forward, even though we don't um, may not necessarily agree on every single point. And great leaders are able to do that. And so what I've tried to incorporate, again, is the curiosity, being a listener, being able to really process what other folks are saying and what other folks are thinking and processing it, and then seeing what can I take from that that will help me shape a vision that people can rally around and go towards, and then finally the whole consensus building.
Yes, you're absolutely right. That kind of leads. I love the 3 points you said: curiosity, being a great listener, and a consensus builder. That kind of leads into my next question for you, and
Mm-hmm.
it's, good leaders ask great questions.
Mm-hmm.
What has been some of the best questions that you have asked or have been asked of you that made a big difference in your path?
You know, it's a three letter word that often people will take as a negative. When you start a question off with why,
Mhm.
you start the question off with why, and you have to be able to follow that up with, I may ask a person, uh, why did you why do you think that is the proper course of action? Because I want to get feedback from you.
Mhm.
Okay, I don't want it to be taken as a negative. I want you to understand that I value where you're coming from. Okay, so um, the why question. The second would be the how, the HOW. In the team concept, in the team ecosystem, you always want to ask the question, how can we get to our destination? I value your input. How do we get there? Okay. Does it fit my vision? Because I'm going to cast a vision for us to follow. But I want you to know that you have a stake in this. And so I'm always going to ask the why question. I'm always going to ask the how question. How do we get there? How do we get to the destination? I'll use an example. Um, as I said before, I moved into management kind of late in my career, and one of the most challenging jobs that I had was when I was a facilities manager of at Marathon, and I had been the manager of business services, loved the job that I had in business services, had a great team. I had about 15, 20 folks, and we were just kicking butt. Productivity
Killing it.
was high. We were making all of our performance goals, which led to the team getting paid. All the individuals on the team getting paid, good bonuses at the end of the year. And so my manager said, I want you to, I'm going to send you over to be the facilities planning manager. And I had seen from a distance that the facility, being the facilities planning manager, was kind of, it was like going to the graveyard because three previous facilities managers hadn't lasted with their crew. And none of them, and the three previous managers didn't have melanin in their skin, and I was going over to a group that didn't have any melanin in their skin, and so I went over there, and my first staff meeting, one of the guys, he was an older gentleman, been with the company a long time. He had actually been the facilities manager at our sister company in Ohio. He set up in a staff meeting and he said that, hey, we know what we're doing, just chill. And I smiled and we moved on with our agenda. And I went back to my office. I thought about it afterwards. And so I watched them for about a month. And the one thing that I noticed that and these were, I had an architect, interior designers, construction manager, um, facilities coordinator. I had all these specialty folks that were part of the team, and they were very good at what they do. But I noticed that uh, uh, they worked very, very hard, but they didn't work very, very smart. They were very, very inefficient in um, doing their jobs, which led to a lot of stress, a lot of angst amongst the group. I noticed it right off the bat, and so I called a staff meeting, and I basically told them, I said, "Look, you guys, I respect your abilities, each and every one of you. I respect your abilities, and you have done a great job for this company over the years. And you guys are hard workers to your detriment. To your detriment, you're very, very hard workers. And because you work so hard and get so little out of it, okay, we're going to do a course correction. And I'm going to help you, and you're going to help me do the course correction. And we're going to set out a plan. We're going to set out and this was before vision boards. Okay, but we did a vision. Basically, we did a vision board, and we readjusted some roles and responsibilities, and people came kicking and screaming. But I met with each one of them individually as well. We met as a group, and I shared my vision, and I met with each one of them individually, and I shared my vision and how they played a role, how I saw they played a role in that vision. But then again, the curiosity came in. I was curious to want to know what they wanted to do, what they thought. And so I asked the how and the why questions. And once they saw that it was not dictatorial and it was not unilateral, but bilateral, I was able to get them to come along. And a year later, they were knocking it out of the park. We were building buildings in far-flung places, and we were doing redesigns of the office structures and doing some cutting-edge things. I sent the whole group, which had never been done. I sent the whole group to Chicago to go to it's kind of like the Super Bowl of furniture. And it's at the Merchants Market in Chicago along the Chicago River. And the previous managers would only send one person at a time. And I sent the whole group, sent them all, and I worked their jobs for a week. If they were up there for a week, I basically worked their jobs, worked the tower for by myself, and for a whole week. But they appreciated that I invested in it. And after that, after I invested in them and they saw that I cared about them, then it wasn't so difficult for me to throw ideas out and not get pushback from. So again, the confidence piece, the curiosity. I know we're asking about questions, but that was probably the going out and letting them know that we're going to cast a new vision, but how are we going to get there? I need you. And why do we need to get there? And I laid it all out for them, why we needed to get there. So, and it turned out really well.
Well, that is awesome. And so tonight, guys, you are on listening to Talk Leadership with Cedrick LaFleur. Our guest tonight is Micheal Smith. And what we just talked about are what are some good questions that impact him and impact his teams. And here's what he said. Now, the first thing, though, before I say that, so the principle you see scrolling across your screen says the hammer principle. Never use a hammer to swat a fly off someone else's head, right? So as Mike was talking about his team, right, he could have used a hammer to bully them into doing what he wanted, but he used a different approach. He used questioning. And he said, look, the first thing I do, I start off with the why question. Now, the beautiful thing about a why question, it's a high gain question. It never can be yes or no. So you're going to always have a discussion. You're always going to bring people into the discussion. And you know what? You let them be heard. Now, I don't know if you picked up on that, but that's what he was saying. Okay. Now, the next question, he says the how question. How are we going to accomplish this goal? Again, it's a high gain question. Never can be yes or no. This is another way to keep your team engaged and involved and buy into your leadership. I absolutely love it. So here I have a wild card question for you. So tell us, I know, you're fit and trim and all this type stuff, but we've been home in the house with COVID lockdown for, a couple of months almost now. So tell us, what's your favorite dessert? What's that thing that you go, man, I have to have this?
Chocolate sheet cake.
Chocolate cheesecake?
No, chocolate sheet cake.
Chocolate.
You wouldn't know anything about it. It's an Oklahoma thing. I see, and it's a North Louisiana thing. I see Burnell Gistan is watching this. Chocolate sheet cake is just a chocolate, real dense, flat cake. It's on a sheet pan, and you can put some nuts in it and all that. And you get a square of that or a bar of that, and put some vanilla ice cream on it. It's heaven. Now I haven't had it in a long time, and I see Melissa Cunningham is on the line. So Melissa, you could hook a brother up. I think you could do that. if not, I see your mother's on the line. She could probably hook me up.
So you recruiting?
Yeah, I'm recruiting her. Chocolate sheet cake. Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah. Melissa, if you could.
And let me spell that out. It's SHEET. Okay. Unless y'all get it twisted. All right. Chocolate.
Okay. All right. Well, Melissa, if you cook that, and you have to make sure that you hook a brother up as well, I can try that. So, growing is a part of being an effective leader, not only growing your teams, but also growing yourself. And we say that with the law of intentionality, growth has to be intentional. It doesn't just happen. You don't just wake up one day and you think differently and talk differently and interact with people differently. Right.
Right.
So what do you do for professional and personal growth?
Lifelong learner. You have to be a lifelong learner if you're going to be successful as a leader. If you're going to be as successful as a man or a woman or a servant, you have to be a lifelong learner. I didn't start off to obviously I have a company called Pine Place Development. I didn't start off with any kind of intention of being an entrepreneur. Didn't really have any intentions of being a petroleum engineer at the time, but growing up in Oklahoma and driving along dusty roads and seeing pump jacks, I was curious what that was, and I read up about it and noticed that as I was reading about engineers, I noticed that there weren't a lot of them that were African American at the time, and my curiosity got the best of me, and I was pretty good in math and science and those things, but I was actually better in government and civics, and so I was probably destined to go into community service, public service. But to be successful, you have to be a lifelong learner. One of the greatest things that I did, and I'll use this real world example, back late 90s, it might have been 99, 2000, 2001. Every year I would go to Black Enterprise Entrepreneurs Conference. It was a 3-day conference. It was Sometimes it was in Florida, sometimes it was in Nashville. One year it was in Nashville. One time it was in Florida. One time it was out on Arizona. And I would always go because I was, again, curious about what it is, what does it take to be an entrepreneur. Had no desire necessarily to be an entrepreneur, but I was curious. One year I was in Nashville and happened to be sitting in a seminar. They have various seminars. I happened to be sitting next to a young man who was um, from Houston. And lo and behold, we struck up a conversation. And and I asked him, well, what is your ambition? What are you trying to do? And he says, I want to open up a restaurant and sell chicken and waffles. I said, chicken and waffles, what? And then I asked the why question. Why do you want to do chicken and waffles? He says, well, on the East Coast, that's in the West Coast, that's a big thing, and I think it could be successful in Houston. I said, okay. So how are you going to get there? The how question.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me how he was working on his business plan and those kinds of things. Fast forward, I guess 4 years later, this young man by the name of Marcus Davis opens up a little small spot called the Breakfast Club. And 4 years prior, he and I are sitting in a seminar at the Black Enterprise Entrepreneurs Conference. And then one thing led to another, and he started the Reggae Hut. And then one thing led to another, now he has culture. And one thing that led to another, and now he has a couple of restaurants in Intercontinental Bush
Airport.
Intercontinental Airport.
Mm-hmm.
And it all started from his desire or his investment at the time, $500 investment to learn something. And so the key to success, obviously, that is a monetizing thing. You're monetizing yourself. He was monetizing himself. But in leadership, in pure leadership, you cannot be stagnant. If you're stagnant, it is to your detriment by being stagnant. You have to learn. You have to see what's out there. You have to grow as an individual. You have to grow in your thinking. You have to grow your spirituality. I won't go there. I don't necessarily want to go and talk about spirituality, but you need to grow in your spirituality as well. But you always have to be on the learning curve. I think for your professional growth, I tell this, I talk to young people all the time. I actually am part of a group. I'm part of a group that's called Houston Real Men Read. And I've been a part of that for several years now, where we go into schools and underperforming schools. And so it's a collaboration between Scholastic Books and HISD. And you go in, you read to fifth graders one time a month. And so I EM Young School, I go over there and I read to fifth grade class. Usually I go a couple times a month for an hour, and I read to a fifth grade class. But great leaders master the King's English. Great leaders read. Great leaders don't necessarily type emails. Great leaders pick up a pencil and paper and they write. They write letters because you are able to shape your thoughts better when you're writing, and you're writing and scratching out, and you're thinking, and how can I say this a little bit better? How can I communicate this better? How can I get this thought over better? And so learning the King's English, being a writer, being a lifelong learner, you should never be stagnant. You should always be continue to look to improve yourself in whatever vein that is.
Yes, well, that's awesome, and here's what I heard you say, and I want to make sure our audience pick up on this. Never settle for good when great is available. Mm-hmm. You see, when you're not stagnant, that means that you're saying, I'm not settling for good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not settling to just be good enough. I want to be great. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to a conference and pay $500, $500 to go to a conference, and then open up multiple restaurants in the fourth largest city in the United States. I'm gonna invest $500 in myself and retire from a 34-year career and open up my own business. Right? I'm not going to just sit down and settle. You said great leaders read, great leaders write, great leaders never settle for they are always trying to learn the king's English, if I said that right.
And I'd go one step further, Cedric. Great leaders uh, are not ashamed to grab someone's coattail, i.e., mentorship. I think I think it's important uh, for, uh, and I just use myself from a personal standpoint. I need to be hooked up with someone because I need to be joined at the hip with someone that can tell me about me, that can show me the way, can give me uh, uh, differing opinions, someone who has done something before that I aspire to do, someone who is level-headed and is not afraid to get to issue out tough love. Uh, you grow as a leader when you understand you don't have all the answers, and you grow as a leader when you understand that you are not a finished product. You're still being shaped and molded and readjusted. I think it's important. I think a lot of times we look at our political leaders who have been in office for a long time, and they do some good things,
Hmm.
but sometimes they get into they cast themselves into a mold and they never get out of that mold. They don't. They never reshape themselves. They never change with the times. And leadership is dynamic.
Yes.
Leadership is not It's not static. It's dynamic. It's free flowing, and it ebbs and flows, and it bends and twists, and you have to be able to. Good leaders are able to adjust to the times, adjust to the situation, adjust to the moments.
Yes. Absolutely. It's sort of like when it comes to cultural trends, we say go with the flow. But when it comes to character, stand like a rock. And I want to
Mhm.
make sure that that's exactly what you're saying right there, right?
Mhm.
It's always good for a leader to be dynamic and adjust and be willing to change, be
Mhm.
willing to listen to others, be willing to get advice and know that they don't know everything.
Mhm.
Right. So with that, you said the word, the M word, mentor.
Mhm.
So how has a mentor impacted your professional journey?
Well, I've had, actually, I have probably, let's say I have about six mentors, um, um, probably two to three on a personal level, just in life, and then two to three there from a professional standpoint. The mentors on a professional standpoint, uh, we get together um, um, about once a quarter, and we do a self check, and usually do a self check on me, and where am I going? How am I getting there? Uh, where are we at today versus where we were 3 months ago? Why aren't we hitting our targets professionally or personally, whatever? Um, and it's that accountability that they provide for me. Uh, you could call it accountability partners.
Hmm.
Um, then I have about two or three close friends that, from a personal level, uh, they dig deep into my personal uh, life. How am I doing as a husband? How am I doing as a father? How am I doing as a grandfather? How am I doing as a friend? Um, um, is my is my is my spiritual foundation uh, in check, or does it have some cracks in it? And we talk those things out, and they share with me what they see from their perspective, and uh, uh, and it helps me. It gets me. They help me uh, redirect to my North Star, and I'm the better for it. It keeps me humble. Uh, it keeps me focused. It it keeps me grounded, and then it keeps me motivated. It keeps me energized, and I think anyone in leadership should uh, uh, be joined at the hip. Take someone along for the ride on this journey that you're going in leadership. I'll use you as an example. Obviously, you're part of the John Maxwell leadership team, but and you and John Maxwell can sit across the table, dinner table, and have a great conversation. But you didn't get there uh, yesterday. It was a process,
Right.
and I'm sure there was a series of mentors that uh, you had that took you to the level that it captured John Maxwell's attention to bring you on, not necessarily as part of his leadership team, but to have you as one of his um, good friends that will mentor you. Um, and I think at this stage of my life, I spend a lot of time with young people and old people, young people and seasoned people. Uh, but that's where my passion is. My passion are with uh, senior, with seasoned individuals and young people. And I have, I don't have as much despair about younger generations that a lot of people do, because if I'm not going to get in the fight with them, then I shouldn't complain.
Right.
And so I like I um, I have about 8 guys, uh, and they run the gamut from about 15 all the way up to about 35. And uh, I engage them every month at some point in time, every month. And we'll go out to dinner, or I'll call them at 2 o'clock in the morning. Hey, what's up? Tell me about this, or I'll show up at their band recital unannounced, or if they're in school, stuff like that. Um, Mentorship is a key. Um, None of us got where we are on our own, and before you take your last breath, someone will be there to 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 kind of guide you, even when you take your last breath. And so, uh, effective leaders have mentors. They have to
Yes.
have mentors. They have to have mentors.
Absolutely. Wholeheartedly agree with that. I'm glad you said that. So, hey, I want to ask you a quick question. I know
Mhm.
you're a sports fan, but so tell us, what's your favorite sports team? Football.
Okay.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but I
No,
am.
well, no, it's not on the spot. On the in the NFC, I've always been a 49ers fan. Always
Okay.
been a 49ers fan. In the AFC, I've always been a Raiders and a Steelers fan. Raiders and Steelers. Do not
Okay.
mention Dallas Cowboys to me. Uh, True story. Growing up in Oklahoma, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Obviously, growing up in the '60s and '70s. This was before cable, and in Tulsa we had 3 stations: ABC, NBC, CBS. And every Sunday during football season, we uh, had the Dallas Cowboys on. That's every 14 weeks out of the year we had the Dallas Cowboys.
Cowboys.
And so you never really got a chance to see any other teams uh, from, and that was pre NFC, AFC, that was NFL, AFL. And so every week you had to watch the Cowboys, and you never got to see any other team unless they were playing the Cowboys. And so growing up, I hated the Cowboys, and hate is probably a harsh word.
Mm.
I dislike the Cowboys. I don't care about the Cowboys too much
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and I'll hold that word. I hate the Cowboys. All right, I'll
anymore.
let you take the easy route. I'll be the
Okay. Yeah.
all right. So,
Okay.
hey, these are. I have a couple of rapid fire questions for
Sure.
you. So, I know you and the wife travel a lot. So, what's your favorite vacation spot?
The most fun. Well, I'll give you two because they're probably equal. One is a cold weather spot. The other one is um, warm weather spot. I We went on an Alaska cruise, and we've been on cruises. We've probably been on about 7 or 8 cruises. Most of them Caribbean cruises, stuff like that. Uh, we went on an Alaska cruise, and hands down was the best cruise I've ever been on.
Okay.
Just picturesque, the nature. Of course, it was cold. The glaciers, waking up and seeing the glaciers outside your window and all that. That was great. So Alaska. Warm weather spot. My favorite destination. We've been 4 times. Is St. Kitts. It's in the lower Caribbean. It's south of Puerto Rico. It's south of St. Thomas, St. Croix, all that. And the interesting thing about that, obviously, it's a Caribbean island,
Mhm.
settled. It's a former British colony. Obviously, large African settlement, and so majority uh, African there. On the Caribbean side of the island, black sand beaches. On the Atlantic side of it, it's blue water, rough seas, all that, and it's just a great destination to go and do nothing or eat, have libations, sit out on the beach, all that. So those are probably my two great favorite destinations.
Okay, so I ask those because I want people to understand that high performers, great leaders, people who are energized about their career, intentional growth, they also understand and know how to relax and enjoy life. And it doesn't mean that just because you are high performing, you have a good career going on, you can't take some time to relax and enjoy life a little bit, right?
Yeah, and I would go if we could, Sid. I'd like to kind of go back and hit on a point um,
Sure.
that you kind of talked about. Great leaders are risk takers.
Yes.
Risk takers. And I'll use an example, my own example. In 2010, um, we were trying to open up an office in Kiev, Ukraine. Ukraine is a former Soviet republic, and if you follow the news, you've seen that Russia has gone in and annexed, took over a portion of Ukraine and Crimea, the peninsula of Ukraine, Crimea. And so in 2010, a group of us, we had a expedition team that we went over to um, evaluate Kiev, the city of Kiev, and find a location for an office. And so we had a team of about 15 folks that flew over to Kiev, and each one of us had our own responsibilities. I was responsible for finding suitable office space. Another person was responsible for evaluating the hospital facilities. Another person was responsible for evaluating school systems. Other persons a couple of people were responsible for looking at the workforce, available workforce, all these kinds of things, living facilities, all this. And so we went over in the dead of winter. It was January, uh, right after uh, right after the New Year, and it was like 15 below zero, and 3 foot of snow, and it was brutal. It was brutal. And so we were going over there, and we had uh, and there, of course, I was the only African American part of the group, and we had security with us, and we had our own security personnel uh, go with us because it is a former Soviet republic and all of that. And as an African American, they have skinheads over there, and so that they would beat up or do damage to folks of African descent. And so we went over there, and we I had found the perfect location, perfect office building that we could would be perfect for Marathon to set up shop and have an office. We were going to need about 20,000 square feet of office space and all that. And so uh, uh, met with uh, met with our realtor, our in-country realtor, and went out, took a look at the space, and the landlord's broker was a little Russian girl, a Russian lady, um, and she took us around, and she took one look at me, and kind of had some question marks about whether or not she was going to take the information back to the landlord. So anyway, she took it back to the landlord. Landlord says no, don't want to lease it to us. So we finished the trip, came back to the United States, don't have a deal. A couple of months, about a month later, month and a half later, we fly back over. And so we're looking for different places, and none of these places fit except for this one office building because it's right next to the square, Central Square, shopping, all this stuff, close to the Ministry of Justice and police office and all that, the police station, all that stuff. So have my have my broker reach out. He's he reaches out to the landlord. Landlord says no. So fly back, fly back to Houston. Tell my manager no luck. So he's upset. He's upset with me because he questioning my ability to get the job done.
And, mhm.
So he says, Mike, you got to get this done, or I will get somebody that will get it done. So third trip over. Third trip over is just me. I flew to Kiev, and and I had an interpreter. First off, we had interpreters. My interpreter was a young man by the name of Sasha. And so he and I were going around reviewing things. And so one night we're walking from dinner, and I see the building that I really really like, and I said we need to. I'm gonna give it one more shot. So I called my broker. I said I would like to see if you can facilitate a meeting directly with the landlord, the owner of the building, and I want to get him one on one and explain to him why Marathon Oil Company should he should lease out office space to Marathon Oil Company. So he calls the broker, the little Russian girl, broker, and she talks to the landlord. The landlord says, "Yes, I'll meet with him, but he has to come to my office." I said, "Oh, okay, cool, no problem." So we have a driver, and I have my broker, and Sasha, my interpreter, and myself. We're in this little car, and so we're driving from the hotel to his office, and so it is just like the movies, The Bourne Supremacy.
Mhm. Yeah.
The Bourne uh, uh, sequence of movies, and we're going through these little cobblestone streets and or Clear and Present Danger. Jack Ryan, Clear and Present Danger. We drive these little streets. So we pull up to this courtyard, and we pull up to the courtyard, and I look over at Sasha, my interpreter, and he's sweating bullets. Now, mind you, it's March now, and it's only like 5 below zero, and he's in the car and he's sweating bullets. Now, you have to understand in many of the Eastern European countries, when you graduate from high school, you automatically you're conscripted or drafted into the army. You have to do 2 years in the army. And then after that, you can go do whatever you want. So he had been a military officer. And so I look over at him and he's sweating bullets. And then I look out and there's like 12 guys standing outside chain smoking. All of them have black suits on, tight black suits, black black string ties, black string ties, and they're chain smoking. And it's very visible that they're all strapped. They all have like large guns,
Okay.
very large guns. And so we pull up, and I step out of the car, and I'm the ultimate Black Russian because they're all chain smoking, and I step out of the car, and they all stop what they're doing. They look at me, and I said, "This can't be good." And so we go inside, and they all just like stop, okay. And to bring it to United States standards, think about you showing up at a Klan rally. Okay, that's how it was. That's the kind of tension it was. So we go into this office building, which is not the office building that I'm trying to lease. Go into the office building, and it's like dark and dank, one light hanging down, and all the stuff. And we're sitting out in this lobby. It's dirty and everything. And the landlord makes us wait for about 45 minutes. And so we finally go into this conference room, and we're sitting on one side of the table. The little Russian lady broker sitting there, and he finally walks in. So I stand up to go shake his hand, and he won't look at me. He doesn't shake. He doesn't look at me. He doesn't smile, and he just looks at my hand and sits down. And so I said, "Okay, all right." And so I start in on my spiel. I'm telling him about how Marathon Oil Company is, fourth largest oil company in the world, integrated oil company in the world. We're doing this. We're in these countries, and yada yada yada. I'm doing all this stuff. I'm laying it on thick, doing the sales pitch, and he's got his head down. He's not looking up or anything. And I said, I know that you may have some trepidation about a Western company coming into your country, and I want you to know that you have a first class office building. You need to have a Western tenant in it. If you're going to have a Western tenant in it, you need to have a first class Western tenant in it. On and on and on and on and on. And I said, obviously, you're a very astute businessman because you have impeccable taste in the brokers that you choose. Tell him what I said. Tell him what I said. And so Sasha interpreted what I said. And the broker started blushing. And at that moment, he raised up his head. He looked at me and started laughing. He said something in English. He said something in Russian, which I didn't know. And then I went for the kill. As a good leader, you always go for the kill. Okay. You write that one down. That's a freebie I'm giving you. You always go for the kill.
He's throwing it in for you. Now, make sure y'all take that note.
So as soon as he started smiling, that's when I started speaking Russian. I knew about 10 sentences of Russian. Where's the restroom? Can I have another bagel? This color is red. I just threw some things out, and I ended up with spasiba, which is thank you. And so he leaned over to his broker, a little Russian lady. He said some things. He stood up, and for the first time, he stood up, shook my hand, looked me in the eye, and said, "Thank you." He walked out. So he walks out, and then we sit down and we negotiated the whole contract within about an hour and a half. We negotiated the contract with her. We left. So out of the twilight, it's like something out of the Twilight Zone, Cedrick. We walk outside, and all the cars and all the men were gone. I failed to mention that there were about 15 cars outside, all of them black tinted windows, Volvos, Saabs, Mercedes, all these things. And all these guys were gone. And so we could see our hotel from the distance. I said, Sasha, you want to just walk back? Of course, 5 below zero. We're walking back. He says, yeah, we can walk back. So we sent the driver on, sent my broker on. So we're walking back. And he says, Michael, do you know who you were just dealing with? I said, no, who is it? He says, that is the head of the Russian mafia in Kiev. True story. True story. That's the head of the Russian mafia in Kiev. I said, oh, okay. So we got back to the hotel, and I went upstairs and changed my underwear and came back downstairs. And Burnell, I know you're still on the line. We drank vodka and chased it with beer. We had a good old time after that. So true story. True story.
Wow, well, that is
So you got to be a risk taker. Good leaders are a risk taker.
absolutely,
Good
absolutely.
leaders are a risk taker. Yeah, so.
Wow, well, that is awesome. So one last thing, and then we're gonna wrap up. So how can people, if they want to get in contact with you, they want to follow you, they want to know more about your leadership skills and experience, and know more about your company, how can they get in contact with you?
Well, I am an open book. You feel free to send me an email at meSmith@pineplacedev.com. That's MESmith@PINEPLACE, D as in Doug, E as in Edward, V as in Victor.com. So pineplacedev.com. I'm also on Facebook under Michael E. Smith. I also have 2 Facebook pages, Morton's Reserve, which is a project that I'm doing in my hometown of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And what we're doing there is the original Black Wall Street. I'm also a product of Black Wall Street. And so we're doing a mixed use development. Again, vision, being able to cast vision and get people to see a vision. And I've been working on this since 2013. Sometimes in real estate, it's a long process. And so we're in the red zone now. And so on my Facebook page, I have a page called Morton Reserve, and I also have a page, Pine Place Development LLC. And so anyone can get a hold of me there, and I look forward to having conversations with each and every one that's interested in what we're doing.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining Talk Leadership with Cedrick tonight. I hope you enjoyed our guest, Michael Smith. I told you guys that we're going to bring you powerhouse people. We're not just going to bring you any and everybody. We're going to bring you people that are doing some major things. We're going to bring you people who are leaders, who have insight, who know how to influence people. And here's what he said, and we're going to wrap up. Here's what he said. He said, leaders must be curious. They must be great listeners. They must be consensus builders. Leaders are risk takers. Leaders read. Leaders write. Leaders have mentors. He said, leaders ask why and how questions. So I hope you pick up on that this evening. And I want you to join us next Monday night. Next Monday night, we're going to go young. We're going to have a high school student with us in studio, and we're going to talk leadership from a youth perspective. In fact, our guest tonight talked about the youth. So we're going to bring in a young high school gentleman that is doing some amazing things. So you don't want to miss the session next Monday, 6:30 Central Time, right here on Talk Leadership with Cedrick.
Sorry, I went too long.